My name is Jordan Redfield Wade. By day, I'm a philanthropist and private investigator, but by night, I protect the people of New York City in a different way.
My name, champ, is RedWing.
As she lay dying, I promised my mother that I would fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and I refused to let her down. I am the defender of New York City. I am RedWing. The outside of the warehouse was made of corrugated metal, like most any other warehouse. This one was different, though, in that the base was made of red brick. Black beams framed the metal in. There was a slight pounding noise, and I bristled at first, until I realized that it was the bass line of a song. It sounded like industrial music. The kind you hear at alternative bars and angsty stripper joints. I approached the front door, which bore no identifying marks except a pewter handle. I opened it and stepped through. The smell is what hit me first. The building smelled strongly of incense, which was mixed with the sweaty smell that you get after a vigorous few rounds of good sexual intercourse. I also smelled traces of fish, and assumed that this had once been where fish had been stored after harvesting. I tried to ignore the smell at first, but then I realized I should follow it, along with the music. The warehouse was a veritable labyrinth. I stepped in on high alert, dart swinging in my hand. I could hear the distinct sound of moaning coming from a few of the rooms off the center. I peeked in on one of them, and saw a porn tape was playing, while two men watched and, well, enjoyed each other to the film. I didn't dwell too long on them, but I couldn't help noticing their eyes seemed to lack pupils and were very glossy. I wondered if they'd been hypnotized by something. I closed the door and kept moving for the large door at the end of the hall. I placed my right hand on the doorknob. It felt warm, and I decided to turn it. The sight my eyes beheld was at once beautiful and tinged with the grotesque. It wasn't just a room in a warehouse. It was a harem. A harem full of naked men and women, or rather, mostly naked men and women. Many of them were wearing collars and leashes and leather harnesses, and the ones who weren't had various leather items on their various body parts. Some were writhing together on the cold, black-tiled floor, while others were leaning against the walls. Some were tied to the wall by rope. This wasn't actually a harem. It was a sex dungeon. It was a twisted sex dungeon. Every single human in that room had all white eyes, as though their pupil had been glazed over by the rest of their eye. I heard Joanna and Scarlett over the earpiece. Joe retched, and Scarlett said in horror,
"My goddess, what has he done to them?"
I went up to one of the men and examined him more closely, and I realized where I'd seen his face a little more recently.
Oh my god, Joe, these are the people. The people who've been going missing. Not just from here in the city, but from up and down the East Coast.
The trafficking victims? This bastard! I'll update the cops, have them send EMTs. Kieran, be prepared just in case.
I wrinkled my nose in fury and distaste. I moved further into the room, looking past the victims, looking for their captor. There was a throne in the back of the room, facing the door that I'd just come through. On either side of the throne stood two muscular men in their mid-30s, wearing sunglasses with the words whore, property, slave, and sinner written on their chests and abdomens. In front of the throne, 3 men of the twink variety sat in a daze. They resembled cats to me, sitting at their master's feet. Sitting on the throne was Alejandro, who was reclining like someone with no cares in the world. He wore a dress shirt the color of lavender flowers, black leather cuffs and armbands. His brown hair was straight, falling in front of one eye, gelled and spiked in the back. He was wearing a silver tiara on his head asymmetrically, with the center front of the tiara over his visible eye. I had to hand it to him, as much as the thought curdled my very blood. I thought he looked kind of good. I mean, if you're into the whole scene kid turned leather hunk kind of thing.
Welcome to my domain. You are the one they are calling RedWing, then? Yeah? I should have guessed you were, Jordan. You were always a little goody two-shoes, weren't you?
Crap. I mean, I figured he'd guessed my secret identity by now, but it was still jarring to know that he had managed to piece it together.
Where are Dean and Tim?
Alejandro raised his hand dismissively to point at the right wall. There was Dean, chained to the wall and ceiling. He looked physically all right, except for his eyes, which resembled that of everyone else in the chamber. Tim looked the same as he had before, constricted to the chair. His head lolled to the side, indicating to me that he was unconscious and hadn't heard my name, thankfully.
What have you done to these people, Alejandro? What have you done to Dean?
If you want me to tell you that, drop your dart thing and let my man tie you up.
Don't do it, Jay. He's deranged and trying to disarm you.
I don't have a choice.
I truly didn't have a choice. I could feel Alejandro's words enter my brain, commanding me to drop them. I dropped my dart.
Boys, secure the newest prisoner.
The 2 men from the sides of the throne tied my hands behind my back. They dragged me by the shoulder and pushed me to kneel before Alejandro and his throne, flanked by the possessed twink boys. Alejandro stood, kneeled, and lifted my head to face him. On his fingers he wore steel armor rings with the fingertip of each one ending in a sharp point. I felt his fingers on my cheek. Our eyes met and I snarled. Alejandro sneered, knowing I was a little bit at his mercy. I'd have to wipe that smirk off his dumb face soon.
I'm not surprised you don't remember me. I didn't really attract any positive attention. I never have. That was always left up to the boys like you, the handsome ones, the fearless ones, the ones that had parents who he knew always loved him. And all I ever got were bullies.
I looked into his eyes, trying to search my memory for eyes that matched those. And then it hit me. The day I met Dean for the first time, the day I decided to take a stand for that one kid who had been picked on, that kid had the same eyes as this man.
You were the kid that I saved that day, almost 15 years ago.
So finally you remember. Good.
He stroked my cheek with his fingertips slowly, not enough to draw blood, but enough to leave a scratch. The way he was staring at me, appraising me, I wasn't sure if he was going to punch me in the face or try to kiss me. He pushed my chin to one side, but my eyes never left his.
But now look at you here, on your knees before me. I've wanted this for a long time. When we were in high school, I wanted nothing more than to have you look in my direction, acknowledge me, be my friend, or something like that. You had everything I wanted. Not the money, not the house, not the clothes, no. It was something else. It was the love.
He spat out the last word, but it didn't make me wince.
You even got a second family after your first was killed. Someone wanted you. Not all of us are that lucky. After my mother died, my dad didn't pay any attention to me until he caught me with a school picture of you. And then he decided any gay boy attracted to you wouldn't be his son anymore. I lost the only family I had because of you. But you... you lucky bastard. You told people who you were. You were able to be your true self. And everyone loved you for it. You made it look so easy. That same year I met you is when that happened. So, could you imagine how much I could have used some help? But you didn't help me. You ignored me.
Look, Alejandro.
Call me Al, Jordan. Saves time, and besides, we go way back.
Fine, Al. You could have come up to me. I couldn't have known you needed someone in that moment. I would have helped you, like I did that first day. But I didn't know. That doesn't make up for your father, but...
Oh, shut the fuck up.
I clamped my mouth shut.
You're so full of shit. You don't care about me, and you never have. And why would you? The summer after you rescued me, I walked all the way up to your house on the hill. I wrote you a letter, and I left it on the steps. I waited for days, weeks. I left it there and checked back every day for a month. You never replied.
Oh, fuck. We were away that summer, remember? That was the summer you started training, and even then, you didn't live there.
Al, I never got that letter. I was away that summer. I also didn't live at the estate at that point. I'm actually sorry that I wasn't there when you needed me.
When you didn't respond, my heart broke. That was the day I vowed I'd have everything you'd have. That evening I learned that I had something. The heartbreak changed me. I became something irresistible to men. Men of all ages would approach me, and lust would fill their eyes, and they'd chase after me. Perverts, a lot of them. It even worked on my Uncle Gino, as I found out that night. He tried to touch me, and when I rejected him, he began to beat me. The whole time he beat me, all I could do was blame you. Something broke in me that very moment. When he stopped beating me, he looked fearful and ashamed. And I looked at him in the eyes and told him to jump off the building. And wouldn't you know it? He did. Right at that very moment.
Jordan, dear, I figured out his powers.
Scarlet sounded cool as a cucumber in the earpiece.
From the Santiago side, the Tempter's side, he gives off powerful pheromones. From the Parcelli side, he can make people do what he wants them. He gives a command, and it is carried out. That power comes from his vocal cords, and the vibration they make. These two powers have been passed down from generation to generation in both the Parcelli line and the Santiago line. He's dangerous. Keep your guard up.
My father heard what had happened. I was shocked because, for the first time, he said he was proud of me. But he still disowned me. Couldn't have a fag in his family line. So, he sold me to another family. That family built this dungeon to keep me in. And they'd send me trainers and teachers. Recently, as you can see, my father got back in touch with me and gave me a task. They had me take these people in for ransom. You see their eyes? They are my slaves. They are all enthralled to me. They will do whatever I command, with whomever I tell them to do it with. If I told them to go out and kill your father, they'd find him and shoot him in the street. If I tell him to go home with a powerful man to be a sex slave, they will do anything that man asks. It's a very lucrative practice. People pay good money for things like this, and each time my dad says he's proud of me. There are very few things a boy won't do for the love of his father. But all that time, with every new toy I brought into the dollhouse, I was plotting vengeance. I wanted you to feel how it felt to have no one who loves you. I wanted you to be alone. I wanted you to experience my pain. If it weren't for you, I'd have been normal. If you hadn't rejected me, I wouldn't have killed my uncle. My father wouldn't have looked at me like a murderer, faggot, and whore. I would have been fucking normal.
On the last word, he grabbed my face, digging his fingertips into my cheek. He snarled and kissed me full on the lips. I wanted to vomit. He licked my cheek and then smacked me across the face, leaving vicious scratch marks. I fell to the ground and rolled onto my back. He put his foot on my chest, pushing the air out of me. He laughed and snarled again.
Who's the bitch now, huh, Jordan? Who?
Jo quickly mentioned her father and a team of cops being 7 minutes out. I had 7 minutes to figure out how to subdue him and free everyone in here.
When I learned how happy you were with Dino over there, the one who all those years ago saved us both from those bullies, I just knew what I had to do. I waited until I heard you fighting, and you ran out of the house. But you want to know something, Jordan? I didn't have to use my powers on him to make him do anything. He wanted to do it because he wanted to hurt you. The only thing I used my power for was to make him last until you came home, so you could watch your beloved Dean betray you.
He chuckled, a malicious grin on his face growing wider and wider. I tried to look away from him, but he used his boot to force my eyes back up to his.
But you still didn't break. So I tried to kill your remaining family members. I had one of my toys do it. He reported to that Detective Lovelace had been shot through the heart, but he survived. And you survived too. That toy is dead now, by his own useless hand. I knew the only place I'd get to beat you nice and proper was here, in my warehouse sex prison, where I am king. Or rather, where I am the only prince. And soon I'll control this city, either by sex or death.
Ugh, really? Let me pause for a second to appreciate how lame that villain name is. Like, seriously. At least Batman had villains like the Joker, Ra's al Ghul, and Bane. Villains with proper villainous-sounding names. But I get my first supervillain, and of course I get Prince. What bullshit. Besides, there would only ever be one monosyllabic mononymous prince. May he rest in eternal paradise. He lifted his foot off of my chest and pulled me to my feet. He pulled back his arm and struck my face with an impressive right hook. I couldn't move, not until he told me to. That's how his power worked. I just had to get him to invite me to fight.
Come on, Jay, you fight me like a fucking man. Bring it, man to man, right now.
I cut the handcuffs with a hardened force field and had gotten back up to my feet. He stood in fighting stance, waiting for me to strike. I resisted his command, wanting him to throw first. He threw the first of a few good punches, which glanced off me as I was moving away from them. He slid his leg under mine, knocking me over, but I rolled backward into a kneeling position, next to my dart. I grabbed it and stood up and began to swing. Alejandro laughed at the small dart I'd brought to the fight.
You'll never win with that ludicrous tiny weapon.
He jeered, and I was officially pissed off. I took a stance and swung my dart around in a figure-8 motion. I would not show mercy to him. I was going in for blood. He took off his dress shirt and was ready to fight me in a glossy black tank top. A saccharin smell filled my nostrils and froze me in place. I felt my heart begin to race. He was using the pheromones to hold me steady and keep me from fighting back. I could almost see the transparent amethyst vapor rising from his body and flowing into my nostrils. The pheromone cloud tightened around my neck.
You're a strong one, Jordan. I've never had to use this much juice before.
I began coughing. I was grasping for ideas of how to counteract, or at least disrupt his pheromones in the air. He started walking towards me. By chance, I looked up, and I got an idea. I was able to get out a thought before he got too close to me.
Whitehawk, activate the sprinklers.
Within a few nanoseconds, there was a downpour of old pipe water on the room, and I was able to move again. The smell disappeared, replaced with a rust-like smell. Alejandro looked irritated at being so easily thwarted and also being so wet. The trafficking victims were shaking their heads and coming out of the haze. I noticed slowly that their pupils began to reappear.
Whew! Smart thinking, Jay. The pheromones won't hold up when mixed with the rust in the water from the pipes. Kieran, you're on. Get those people out of there.
Kieran came into the room, still wearing his helmet and jacket, but now holding a utility knife and his medical kit. I wasn't focused on him, I was focused on the fight at hand. The rope of my dart wrapped around his left ankle, but before I could pull him down, he stepped on the rope with one foot and grabbed the rope firmly with the other. He pulled, and I was jerked forward. He jump-kicked me, delivering his kick to my cheek, and I wasn't fast enough to prevent it. It connected with my face, and I was dazed for a second. With one tug, he pulled the dart from my grip, dropping it to the ground and kicking me squarely in the chest. I fell back, but got back onto my feet. We traded a few punches and kicks for the better part of a minute. He took the upper hand and prepared to roundhouse kick my temple. I was dizzy and foggy and didn't think I could dodge at the time. I squeezed my eyes shut tight and waited for the foot to connect. The strike never landed, however. I opened my eyes. I was in a force field, but it wasn't my own. My force fields were always red, but this one was swirling blue and purple. I looked up and to my left, and I saw a figure wearing almost the same suit as me, with blue accents where mine were red. He also wore an eye mask and a navy blue balaclava covering his mouth and hair. The skin that I could see was the same color as mine. And he was about my height, but he held no weapon.
Blackbird.
The man who had rescued me, who I had hunted for days, was crouching in the window. He glared at Al, putting up a field. He raised the field up into the air, and Al hung above me in the field. His field rose very quickly toward the top of the ancient building, and at the last second, the field disappeared and Al slammed into the ceiling. Al then dropped to the concrete floor. I could tell he was down and out for the count, but not dead. I removed the handcuffs from my holster, dragged him to a nearby pole, and strapped the handcuffs around his wrist around the pole. I ran to free Dean from the wall. He was unconscious, but slowly regaining consciousness. I turned back to Blackbird, unsure of what to say. He looked down at me, and I looked up at him.
Thanks. Anytime. What you gonna do with that one over there? How y'all gonna keep him from silver-tonguing his way out of custody?
Oh, you're right. Guys, do we have a plan?
As a matter of fact, we have. It's just an idea. Kieran came up with it. He'll explain it.
Kieran came over.
Okay, so I have a theory about where the pheromones are being generated, and how he uses that and language to manipulate people. Basically, he secretes it from his hands and arms and various glands all over his body. I don't really have any idea how to deal with that, but it won't help him get out of the solitary confinement cell. He also has the mind control ability, but it is voice dependent. If we disable the vocal cords, he won't be able to manipulate any of the guards. This should do it.
He took a syringe out of his pack, filled with a liquid. I turned to look at Alejandro's unconscious form lying on the ground. I looked back to Blackbird to say something, but realized he had vanished, leaving only one black feather in his place. What an exit. I hovered over Alejandro. I looked at him, and his unconscious face seemed serene, as if he hadn't slept in days and was finally able to get rest. My heart felt a twinge of guilt. I mean, I didn't reject him on purpose, and I didn't really know that he existed. But my existing in the world affected him so much that he was ready to kill whomever he needed to get a chance to kill me. I couldn't blame him for his pain, for feeling like he didn't belong. I actually did shed a single tear. I watched my tear hit his tank top, absorbing into the material. I remembered what I was supposed to be doing. Kieran poked the syringe into his throat. He pushed the liquid in, and I thought I heard a small sizzle.
Jesus, Kieran, what is that?
A low-level corrosive acid.
What?
Relax, he'll recover in a few months. It'll give us enough time to figure something else out.
I watched as Kieran took out the syringe.
Silent men tell no tales. May you speak no more.
After I was done, I heard Dean moan. I rushed to his side to help him stand up. Kieran grabbed Tim, who was still unconscious, and carried him outside the building. "Are you all right?" He stood up, with not much difficulty.
Yeah, I'm fine. But Jay, look out!
Dean pushed me to the side. I heard 2 gunshots and whipped myself around to face Al, holding a gun. Dean had pushed himself in front of me. Al had missed me, but I watched as the first and second bullet hit Dean's chest. Dean was knocked onto his back. "Dean!" I watched Dean fall with shock and horror, and then I looked at Alejandro, my heart and mind filling with rage. My eyes glowed a blood-red color, and with almost superhuman speed, I took my rope dart and knocked the gun out of his hand from across the room. I hooked the rope dart around his neck and pulled down, letting his face slam against the concrete floor. He was unconscious again. Kieran ran back into the room.
Jordan, what happened?
Dean, he's been shot. Tears began welling up in my eyes from my fallen love. I looked at his chest and realized there was no blood emanating from the wound. Strange, I thought, as I bent down to inspect the wound. There didn't seem to be one, however.
Jordan, I'm perfectly fine. I had meant to tell you. After the shockwave, I woke up with you, but I also woke up as, basically a ninja. I guess, a bulletproof ninja. But still, I'm indestructible.
Dean sat up and pulled a folding stealth knife he always carried on him. He put it to his wrist, pressing firmly down and dragging the blade across his skin. The blade didn't leave a single mark, not even a tiny one. And when I looked at the knife, I saw that the blade's edge had been dulled significantly against his own skin. Whoa, wait. I wonder... Try my dart, though. It's dark steel. I handed him my favorite dart, and indicated that he should try the tip of his finger. Just in case. He did, and with a lot of force and effort, he drew a single drop of blood before the wound patched itself up. Joe, are you logging this?
Every single clip. I can pull up the data on Dark Steel if you need it, but let's get you both back here. My dad is coming.
I had almost forgot. I heard the sirens, and they were only a block away, and closing in fast. Dean exited with me through the same window that Blackbird had vanished from. Just like the night before, we traveled by rooftop, and I got to witness firsthand how fast and powerful Dean had become. I mean, he wasn't the Flash or anything like that, but he was definitely above average. I could easily see him win the Olympic silver without even breaking a sweat. He and I were almost equally as fast, but he managed to beat me to my office, and I suspected he had been holding back. We stopped in the alley next to the agency and went in through the side door. As soon as we got in, I sent a text to Jared, asking him to meet outside the agency in the alley as soon as he was done processing the criminals. He texted back 20 minutes. That's how much time I had to address the squad. I walked into the office, leaving my suit on, and took a seat at my desk. I looked around, and the whole team was standing in repose, waiting for me to speak. Scarlett and Joe were holding each other and smiling, and I smiled back at them. The other gentlemen in the room both had one eyebrow raised. I nodded to them. I pulled the black feather that Blackbird had left in the warehouse out of my pocket and looked at it for a moment. I rested my elbows on my knees and folded my fingers in front of my mouth, my nose resting atop my index finger. I closed my eyes for a second, looking for the words, and when I felt I had them, I began to speak. Guys, what we just did out there? When I was 5, my dad brought me to the comic book store. I picked up a comic book about Batman, the protector of Gotham City. The day my parents were killed, I remembered Batman's story, and I remembered how he vowed not to seek revenge, but to seek justice for all of those who needed it. I remembered what he thought Gotham could become. I remember the Green Arrow trying to defend and save Star City. I remember every hero suffering and promising that on the other side, there would be hope. There needed to be hope. They are the symbols of that hope in every one of their stories. I accepted that mission then. That's why I host fundraisers to deal with the streets. It's why I became a detective. It's the reason I donned this suit and mask in the first place. My family has been here since the beginning, and this city meant so much to all of them. This city is comprised of smaller stories of individuals who need a sign that things are changing. They need hope. Today, we as a team proved that we can be that hope. We rescued all of those trafficking victims today. We are responsible for those people being reunited with their families as we speak. We are the hope for Newark City. Now, I cannot do this alone. I need each of your skills, just like we saw today. That is the only way we will be able to get this done. It will not be easy, but nothing in life ever is, and it never should be. When I walk out there and bring Jared into the fold, I want him to come in and see what hope looks like. I want him to see us as the true guardians of Newark City. I want him to see us as a team. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath for a second. I opened them after a moment and continued. I am RedWing. If you will join me, pick a code name close to mine and we'll seal this as a team. Are you with me? There was a long pause, and for a moment, I thought they were all going to scream no right in my face.
I am the White Hawk.
And I shall be the Cardinal.
Dean paused for a second and thought.
My codename will be the Sexy Flamingo.
I cocked my head to the side and gave him the classic, "Don't try me" face. We paused and everyone laughed.
I'm just joking. The Warbird, I guess.
I nodded. Made sense to me. Kieran was the last to speak. He looked around at us, as if he forgot he was in the room and had to make a decision as well.
Well, I think I'll be Sparrow.
I looked at the 4 people I had before me, and thought about those guardian angels that had saved my life that day. Every single one of them was new to this, but this was one hell of a team. I put my mask back on and I went outside in the alley. I waited a few minutes until he arrived. When I knew he could see the suit and not my face, I spoke, my voice being lower than it normally is.
Chief Lovelace, welcome.
Thanks. Word on the street is you're messing with the big fish. You reeled in a challenging subject today. I owe you a personal thank you.
No, you don't. It's what we do. But you're welcome anyway.
You gonna show me who's under the mask?
That comes in a moment. Right now, I need you to see something.
Jared paused and I beckoned him into the agency. Jared stood there looking at our 5-person group. He was definitely surprised to see Joe, Dean, and Kieran, and had no idea what to make of Scarlet. Joanna held up a hand and waved to her father, smirking.
Joanna?
Yeah, Dad. Hi. Big day, wasn't it?
Kieran?
Hey, sir.
Dean?
Captain.
I walked around Jared and stood in front of him. I turned off my voice changer and took off my mask. I looked Jared in the eye and declared the first big thing that we'd say as a team. We are the protectors of this city. We are the bringers of justice. We stand for hope and change. We are the guardians of Newark City. Thank you for listening to RedWing, the audio drama podcast. RedWing is written, directed, and produced by J.V. Hampton Van Sant. That's me. The cast of RedWing includes J.V. Hampton Van Sant, Amanda Jacobson, Chris Green, Dane Shiner, Simon Weeks, Christine Osimo, Skylar Paring, John Buckley, Brittany Nicholson, Lucy Fitzgerald, Kenyon Lang, Katie Hearn Church, Nathan Foster, Atticus Jackson, Rhett Hall, and Kiara Jeter as Birdkeeper. RedWing's official musician extraordinaire is Nico from We Talk of Dreams. Additional music from Kevin MacLeod. The RedWing logo is designed by J.V. Hampton Van Sant, and official character art is from the fantastic Click Art Studios. We would like to thank the following shows for being inspirations and or being involved in the podcast itself. Wine and Crime, Crime and Color, Queen's Podcast, Brain Trust Brothers Podcast, Gravity Beard, The No Sleep Podcast, Conjuria, The Cryptid Keeper, Deliberations, Getting Off Podcast, Spirits Podcast, the entire family at Blazing Caribou Studios, and everyone in the #Audio Drama Sunday family. If you would like to support the show, buy official RedWing merchandise, or if you just want to stay in touch, all of our links are in the show notes and on our website, redwingpodcast.com. Be well, stay safe, and fly high, heroes.